Yeah, it is recording, and it's another recording for this evening as God speaks through Nadine Badenhorst, and we are so excited to have you, Nadine. Welcome. Won't you just greet the folk?
Hi, Janet. Hi, Sheldon. Lovely to be with all the people who are watching, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and Sheldon, won't you just say hi?
Yeah, thanks, Janet. Yeah, Nadine, great to have you joining us. You've probably got the best background of any of us right there, looking very beautiful in the background as well. But
Thank you.
thanks for joining. These are key conversations, key topics at a
Indeed.
time where we are truly seeing God move and on behalf of his people in this hour. So I'm looking forward to this time that we discuss tonight, definitely.
Yeah, we're really privileged to have you. And, I was listening to your podcast earlier, and wow, it really just meant so much sense. It's so liberating. And Nadine, our people need to be educated. But let me introduce you first. Nadine's an advocate of the High Court of South Africa, and for many years she served as the legal counsel for freedom of religion, which is FORSA. Many of you would know of that legal body, which really represents Christians and the church in South Africa, representing the church before government, parliament, and the courts. Amen. And we really have to thank God. I know that you were one of the founding members of that, weren't you,
Yes,
Nadine?
2014.
Was it 2014? So how long did you serve in FORSA?
Until 2022. So it was almost 8 years.
Well, I can remember sitting with you in Rama when you took on um, that committee, and I remember all those sangomas, and many pastors were really they had diverse views. The hall was full, and the last voice to stand up and speak for the church was Nadine, with such authority and such power. Nadine, that gave me new insight into how God has used you, and such respect for you, for this nation. Amen.
Thank you,
All
Janet.
right, so let's have a look at the first question I want to ask you, Nadine, is obviously we're in a very crucial time in the elections of this country, okay, and not only in the natural but prophetically speaking, and there's so much emphasis on these elections, which will take place tomorrow, the 29th. And why is this election so crucial? What would be the destiny and the outcome, do you feel, of these elections? How many would vote? I know I'm putting one or two extra questions in here, but what are
Yeah.
you feeling in your spirit, and what do you see legally for the nation prophetically?
Yeah. Thank you, Janet. So, Janet, this will be our seventh national and provincial elections that we have since the advent of democracy in 1994, and indeed a very important one. I don't think I have to point out the many and the mounting challenges in our country on a political, economic, social, moral, and it just continues level. And we only have to look around us and switch on our TV screens to see the corruption, the poverty, all the things, the violence that's plaguing our country and our people. And I do believe, as I was preparing for this also this morning, that God is grieved about the state of our nation, that he sees the brokenness of our country, the brokenness of our people. And he's a beautiful country over which he's extended so much mercy over the years. And I think he himself is very grieved over the state of the nation. And I was actually reminded of Exodus 3, where the Lord appeared to Moses in a burning bush. And these were his words. He said, "I've surely seen the oppression of my people. I've heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows." And just such a sense for me prophetically that perhaps we are at a burning bush moment in South Africa, and certainly for us as Christians, that it is a time to, like Moses did, to turn aside, and to turn aside firstly to the Lord, to hear, "Lord, what are you saying? What is it that we are to do?" And then secondly, an opportunity for us, in a sense, to turn to Pharaoh, the rulers of our day, and in a sense to demand the release of our people from oppressive and ineffective rule. And we do that by voting, by saying these people who have been in place and who have gotten our country to this place where it's at, we want to put different rulers in place. You know, somebody once said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, hoping to get different results. Well, maybe we should start doing something different if we hope for a different result. And we only get the opportunity to vote on a national and a provincial level every 5 years. And basically, the people who we vote for are the people who will set the policies and the laws in place that will govern our day-to-day lives in this country for the next 5 years. So we won't have another opportunity very soon. So it's a very important decision that we need to make now to ensure that we don't keep going down the same road we have for the last however many number of years, or potentially even a more difficult road. And Janet, I think it's also important for people to understand that what we're voting for now is not for the local municipal type issues relating to service delivery. This is where we sometimes get it mixed up. What we are voting for in these elections is the people, the parties who will represent us in parliament and ultimately in government on a national and a provincial level. So making policies relating to how ultimately we will be governed as a people on a national and a provincial level. And therefore, perhaps the vote that I will be exercising in these elections may well be a different vote to the one that I would maybe exercise on a local level relating to service delivery, and may well be one that is more values driven, because ultimately these are the things that will impact our lives, you know, on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And when you speak about a burning bush experience, this is destiny defying, you know, and destiny defined. And it's truly the destiny of our nation that's at stake here. And, you know, when the people cried, they said, let my people go, let my people go. Moses cried, let my people go. And that's in essence what it is. And I like what you say about, you know, the power of the vote. It's destiny defining for the next 5 years, and God has given us this power, and not only in the spirit, but in the natural as well.
Absolutely. The Lord said to Moses, what is in your hand? What is in your hand? And what is in our hand at the moment? What is in our hand is a ballot, 3 ballots with which we can vote, Janet. And, you know, even though they didn't obviously vote in biblical times, you know, they lived under theocracy. Now it's different. We're not in a theocracy. We're in a democracy where we have been given the rights, the human rights, the constitutional right to vote. But I do believe there's scriptural support that encourage us to exercise this vote, number one, by going tomorrow and voting. And secondly, to exercise it in such a way that it is for the good of our nation and for the people. And perhaps I can just highlight 2 scriptures here. The one for me is Romans 13, verse 1-7, where it speaks about God being the one who institutes authority, government authority, and that God expects of us as citizens to submit to that authority for the Lord's sake. Now here, if God expects of us to submit to authority, right? Here we have an opportunity to choose who are the ones that we submit to. And it would be a great opportunity that would be missed if we don't exercise this opportunity to choose who are the ones that we're going to submit to in reverence for God. Yes. And in the same breath, Proverbs 29, verse 2, where it says, when the rulers are good, the people are happy. When the rulers are evil, the people complain. So this is our opportunity to make sure that we do put good rulers in place so that our people can be happy, you know, because they do put policies and laws in place that are ultimately for the good of the people rather than for selfish gains. So, yeah, biblically, I believe there's enough to encourage us to make the effort tomorrow, to go out. Every vote counts. I think that's one of the things that sometimes we can also think, why bother? You know, why bother? Is my vote really going to make a difference? But fortunately, we live in a country where we don't have an electoral system where it's the winner taking it all. And, you know, it's just one party that fills all the seats in parliament. We have a system of proportional representation, which means that ultimately the votes get allocated in proportion to how people voted. So that is why we can have a number of different parties in parliament to represent the different voter groups, the interests of the different voters. So every vote counts. Go cast that vote in a way that honors God, for the glory of God and for the good of the people.
I like that. Cast the vote that honors God. Amen.
Yeah,
Know who our leaders are that honor God.
absolutely.
So Sheldon, I'm
Yeah.
going to hand over to you.
Yeah, I love that burning bush kind of analogy and stuff, because it was an encounter Moses had with God that gripped his attention. Of the bush wasn't being consumed, but it gripped his attention for God to speak to him. And if there's ever a time, I think God is catching our attention of what we need to do as God's people, because in that passage it actually speaks about, there 2 times it references God hearing their prayers. The first time it says that the prayers, he heard their prayers, and then the second time later it says that those prayers have come to his ears. It's like they've come closer, and he's now going to respond. And I think we ask, why are these elections now after 30 years are 7th? Why do they feel more crucial than any other time? And the world and life has seasons and times that God allows things to kind of play out, and then there are moments when he steps in. And it feels like we're in one of those seasons now where he's asking of his people, step in. And I just think there's this balance of the church to understand, like I always say, in Paul's day, when he went to Ephesus and turned the place upside down, there was no voting being cast there, but he turned the place upside down because the kingdom came, and he used his governmental legislative authority as the ecclesia to set order. But like you're saying, today we have the power of democracy that is now in hands, not a Roman ruler. Jesus was born in a time where no one had a say. You went with what was given to you, and the Lord still worked in that. But we have an of authority now to cast this. And I know many people kind of say, oh, well, my vote doesn't make a difference. As the church, we invoke change in the heavenlies because we battle not against flesh and blood. But, I think 2 things here quickly to answer. I think we need to keep educating our people, because many people don't know there are 3 ballots that they need to. So maybe just explain a little bit to people on that practically kind of stuff. But then what must people vote for? And I know this is the question everyone asks. Do you vote according to the party, to the person, to, values, to all those things that are speaking out? What would you say to somebody walking into that kind of the voting station? What would they be saying in prayer, or how would that be?
Okay. Sheldon, so I think the first thing just on how the voting system is going to work tomorrow, because it is different to what we've seen in the past. For the first time now, we're going to have 3 ballots, not just 2 ballots. So basically there are 400 seats in Parliament. So there can be 400 representatives in Parliament. And now Parliament is basically made up of 2 houses. So it's on the national level, normally what we see on the TV, but there's also the provincial Parliament, and often both of those houses of Parliament are involved in voting on these laws and policies for our nation. And that's what we're voting for tomorrow. So the 400 seats that's in the National Assembly, how they are split this year, and from this year going forward, the law has been amended, is 200 and 200. So 200 of those seats will be filled by political parties. So that's how we've always voted. So you go cast your vote for a political party. But then the other 200 seats can now be filled either by a political party or by independent candidates. And that's the change. For the first time now, we have people standing not in the name of a political party, but standing in their own name, representing voters. And so in the different provinces, there are different people. I think in the Western Cape, it's only Zaki Ahmad, who is an independent candidate. But so there you have an option for those remaining 200 seats in the National Assembly to vote either for a political party or for an independent candidate. And so that's really the new ballot. And then the third ballot is on a provincial level. And there again, you'll be able to vote either for a political party or for an independent candidate. So that's really the change. So you need to decide, are you going to exercise one vote, the same vote for all 3 of them, or different votes? I just keep it simple for me. Ultimately, people say, but do provinces have a say on national issues? Does it matter? No, and actually they do. Provinces vote on the hate speech bill. Provinces vote on the sex education in schools, So for me, I keep it simple. I exercise the same vote, but that's for each person to make up. As I say, it's maybe different to how I would vote in a municipal election, but that's basically how it would work tomorrow. And then what are the things that we need to consider? Well, firstly, I think it is a vote that we exercise prayerfully. I think it is something that we need to come to the Lord for, and ask the Lord for wisdom and for insight, how he wants us to vote. And then the 3 things that I think are important to consider, just to make it simple again, I think the 3 C's for me firstly is character. And so we want to vote for people who are of good moral character, who are not in it for themselves, selfish gain, greedy, but ultimately who are people who want to do good and right by the people. Now, of course, we would think that when a party has the name Christian in it, or they give themselves out as a Christian party, that, that those would be the people to vote for. And we would certainly hope that, if a party professes to be a Christian party and Christian leadership, that they are those people. But at the same time, I want to say there may be other parties and other people in leadership positions who are not necessarily branded as Christian, but who also have a good track record of moral leadership and righteous government, and thereby I mean doing what is right and doing what is good, ultimately for the good of the country and the people. So that for me would be the first C, is character. Secondly, competence. I think does the party and do the leaders that you want to vote for, do they have a good track record of competence, of knowing how to engage in these conversations in parliaments, in governments, and not only throwing Bible verses at things, but actually engaging with real political viable solutions. Do they have a plan for South Africa? And yes, we know that ultimately our hope is in God, not in a political party, but do they engage with the issues in a sensible and a reasonable manner? So competence. And then thirdly, for me, would be content. And there I talk about what actually are their values, what are the laws and the policies that they drive. And here I think it's very important to consider that we live in a country that is one of the most liberal constitutions in the world, and where increasingly these liberal values are being driven and promoted through laws and policies. I mean, we know, for instance, that the hate speech bill was very recently adopted, and that would really pose a great danger and a threat to our freedom as Christians to freely speak and preach the Bible, the whole of it, or even the parts that people don't like, that they find offensive, So the party that I'm going to vote for, ultimately, are they a party that's aligned with my own values, particularly when it comes to issues like education, private property, all of these kind of things. I think it becomes increasingly important to look at those things. But at the same time, I just want to throw this in. No political party is, of course, is perfect. It's human beings ultimately who are in those parties, and even with the best intentions, they will have their flaws. And then I think sometimes also we can make big issues of things that aren't actually issues. Say, for instance, the death penalty. There are parties who particularly promote, the reinstatement of the death penalty, but that kite has flown. If I can put it that way, that issue has been decided by the Constitutional Court. The kite has gone over the skies. That issue is not going to be pulled back again. And perhaps even with the issue concerning abortion, we have a very liberal constitution. So whether a party will really be able to overturn abortion laws, I don't know. But then again, as I say, there are some hot potato issues at the moment in which we can exercise our votes, and in that way influence it, be salt and light, and that we should do.
Yeah, no, that's outstanding. I think what you're saying there is, no political party or person's perfect, but we want to be able to, with our vote, to hold them accountable to the things they're saying, to be able to uphold those standards, and hate to break it to people that, your pastor's not perfect either, so let's get real, no one is, but we are doing the very best that we're doing to see these things coming. But the wealth of knowledge there, Nadine, thank you for sharing that. Janet, I know you've got more to share as well on your side.
Nadine, I love what you are explaining about parties that need to be able to debate, parties that have experience, leaders, that actually have a mandate for governance, a mandate for parliament. Because I'm being faced with so many questions. Why can't I vote for this party or that party, even though they've got Christian leaders and whatever? And, we can't have a parliament where we've got inexperienced people who know nothing about debating, who know nothing about the law. And as you say, it's the parliament going forward in these next 5 years that are setting the policies and the laws for our nation. So we need leaders of stature. We need leaders that have a mandate for government.
Absolutely.
And I want to respect parties that have Christian leaders, etc. But if they don't, if there's little experience, and I was in conversation with an old leader a few weeks ago, and he's been in Parliament for 30 years. And I mean, I was so, he spoke so well, and he gave such insight into actually what takes place in Parliament. And I think very few Christians actually know what's going on in their nation in the sphere of governance. That's why we have to call you back in. No, I'm teasing. All right.
Absolutely. I represented, as I said, I often represented, Christians and people of faith in South Africa in Parliament and in the courts. And, it doesn't help to just quote Bible verses, to those places of power. Obviously, ultimately the decisions that we make and the submissions that we make and the laws and the policies that we promote, I think that should be influenced, by our biblical worldview. But God will give us wisdom then with that worldview to actually put forward more practical, sensible, thought through and thorough policies and laws that go further than just quoting Bible scriptures. So I think that's ultimately what we want to look for.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I just love that. It confirms what I've been feeling for months. All right. So in essence, then you agree that we're not voting for a Christian government. All right. But Christians should set the standard. This is actually summing up what you've been saying, But we also need to create space for the Muslims to express their religion and their values. So explain a little bit about the influence of, other religions, how they made room for in Parliament. How should we as Christians, tolerate, if I can put this way, because we need to love them. And maybe you could just explain, what you have encountered or some experience you've been through with other people.
Yeah. Janet, I want to jump back to the phrase that you used just now, Christian governments. I hear people say that a lot, but we want Christian governments. And what does that mean? When we say that, what are we hoping to see? Because I think if it means a government that will rule our country as a theocracy, like old Israel, with having Christian laws and regulations in policies in place, then I think we have to think very carefully, because as you correctly pointed out just now, we don't live in a theocracy. We live in a democracy. And that means that we have people of very many different religions or no faith at all, people with very different worldviews to our own, people with very different thoughts and opinions, some who agree with abortion, some who agree with homosexuality, or, whatever your thing might be. And freedom of religion, thought, and opinion is actually enshrined in our Constitution as a basic human right. And that will not change. So for that reason, we can't go back to a place where we're going to say, well, if we're going to have a Christian government in place, then we're just going to have Christian laws and policies that we're going to enforce on our people, and everything will go well with us. Because what are we going to do with people who don't ascribe to the same Christian truths, the same Christian doctrines and values? Are we going to force them to accept our faith by law, by systems, by policies and laws? Are we going to, and if they don't accept it, are we going to fine them? Are we going to lock them up? What are we going to do? Are we going to impose Christianity on them? Because I don't see Jesus doing that. Even in his times, there were people, he said, this is the way, I am the way, the truth, and the life, but choose. He gave people a choice, and there's something about the sanctity even of choice. Choose if you want to follow me. He didn't impose it on people. And history has shown, it gets very messy when the church tries to do the state's job and the state tries to do the church's job. Traditionally, it is better when church and state are separate in a sense. I mean, we only need to think back upon our own history under apartheid, when the National Party used the Bible and used religion as a way to basically enforce their political will. I mean, think of Russia. The church in Russia, the Orthodox Church in Russia, is part of the government structure. It's embedded in the government structure in Russia. Now, again, all of us know what's happening in Russia and some of the heinous crimes that are taking place, at the hand of Russia. And we also know that what has happened in Russia is that means that the true church in Russia is being oppressed, because there's only a certain kind of Christianity or a certain kind of church that is accepted. So I think we need to be sober about it, that it's not the government's job to do the job of the church.
Yeah.
It's not the job of the government to do the job that Jesus has given us as Christians to do, which is to preach the gospel. Government's job is to promote laws and policies that will grant freedom to the church to be the church, and to the Muslims to have their mosque, and for every person to make up their own mind regarding what the religion they want to follow and how they want to do it. But government's job is not to be the church itself. So separation of church and state is important, and things start going wrong when we get these things entangled. But on the other hand, it means that we, as we've already said, we do want to put people of good moral character who will work for the good of the country and its people in place. I'm all for that. But as I've already balanced it out, saying that it doesn't mean it's only Christian parties who will do that. So if we mean Christian government and we mean people of good moral standing and good moral character, then I'm all for that. But as I've said, these are the things that we need to weigh up, because it's not only the parties who are branded as Christian that necessarily have those people of good leadership and with a track record, experienced leadership who will give us that.
Yes, and if we just have to look at the example of Jesus and how he lived his life under Herod's government.
Absolutely.
And the impact that he made. He didn't try and change those structures.
Yeah.
Because government is instituted by God. But he came and he brought influence, saying, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Bringing heaven's government within the spheres of Herod's government.
Yeah. Janet, personally, that's something I feel very passionate about, and I think we see these examples in the Bible of perhaps, the problems we are facing today are not new. They're different, but they're not new. We only have to read our Bible to see that people lived through the most terrible of times under difficult rulers. I've already mentioned Pharaoh. You've mentioned Herod now, Nebuchadnezzar, the list goes on. And Jesus is our model. He didn't work to overthrow the governments, but he said the kingdom is an internal thing. And I think as Christians, we can sometimes almost think, well, when we have a Christian government in place, the government's going to save South Africa. The government can't save South Africa. The kingdom is an internal thing that comes one person, one soul at a time, as we are obedient to Christ's mandate to make disciples of nations. And that's our job. That's not the government's job. And I think, again, sometimes as Christians, we get so caught up in the thing of social justice. And I'm not saying social justice is not important, because in that we reflect something of Christ's heart of mercy and compassion. But at the same time, let's keep the main thing the main thing. We don't want to send people with full tummies to hell. So let's do good, but let's make sure that we share God in the process. So there are certainly people who God's called, into the realms of politics and whatever, who have a voice and who are able to influence and work, with those government laws and policies. And we have an opportunity to influence those, and we should do so, to be salt and light. But ultimately, let's keep the main thing the main thing. Let government do its job, and let we make sure that government's job is to ensure that this side of eternity, our lives are are good and safe and comfortable. But our job is to make sure that side of eternity, that people will be in a place where, ultimately there's healing, full restoration, no more wars, peace, joy forevermore. And our hope is therefore not in a political party, but it's in Jesus Christ. And let's keep that the main thing.
Excellent. Excellent. Sheldon?
Excellent. Yeah, I think you say some good stuff there. That debate on church versus state is a constant debate. It's very similar to sacred and secular. And I think when you look at it from the perspective that everything's sacred, it changes the perspective. Constantine was very clever in 300 around there to bring the church into his governmental kind of setup so that he could control the church, because the church was a threat. So it depends really which way you look at it from. If the state is going to dictate to the church, then we've got trouble. But the other way around is the church is keeping the state accountable.
Yes.
Why? Because and this is where I think in the modern times the people have looked at the government as, this is our king. This is who is going to now save us. And actually, we as God's people, we have a king. If you
Yeah.
read 1 Colossians 16, it says, by him all things were created in heaven and on earth. So now this is everything, okay? Visible and invisible. It's covering everything is to him, whether thrones, now we're talking governmental leaders, visible or invisible, here on earth, dominions, visible or invisible, rulers and authorities, all things were created through him and for him. You see, so when we have the position, you see, of it's for Christ, he's our king. These are just people he's setting in place that we keep accountable to the standards that we have by the word of God. We've lost that in our country. The church has not kept the government accountable because we've kept silent or we backed off. And I know you for years would say, like, I haven't been silent. I've been shouting from the rooftops for years. Yeah, people would just have listened to me of what I'm doing. And I think it's quite important to, we're going to a time now where we're in a season where everyone's saying the church needs to make a noise. We need to start, having a say, we need to, and people come out in the wrong ways, saying the wrong stuff. And we need a Christian government, but then how are we going to cater for our Jewish and our Muslim kind of South Africans who are in this nation? You've got to cater for everything. And I think it's that position, so for you, just having said all that, like, what is making a noise as the church look like, because you've fought for this, you've stood for this, and that, but some are clanging cymbals instead of voices of authority and clarity that bring for the ecclesia to arise in this hour. What would you say to that?
Sheldon, great question. My first answer would be we should make a great noise in the heavenlies. That's our first place. 1 Timothy tells us to pray for our rulers, pray for the people in authority. And this is an opportune time for us now to kind of start turning aside moments, where the Lord's getting our attention. And now, if, sometimes during the year we forget to pray, but now if ever there's a time to pray, it's pray and pray for the people, how they're going to vote tomorrow, so let's make a noise in the heavenlies, petition God for mercy, petition God for wisdom, for intervention. But then secondly, we can make a noise by casting our vote tomorrow. And again, a lot of people may say, well, how's my one vote going to make a noise? Well, my one vote may not, but our votes collectively, our votes joined together will make a great noise in terms of, these are the kind of people that we want to put in power. These are the kinds of laws and policies that we want to see them promoting. And then thirdly, I believe we can make a noise by our witness. Actions speak louder than words. And so stop complaining. Again, start praying, start making a difference, start being the difference. And again, particularly from my experience as, for SA legal counsel, I want to say participate. Participate, again, these are part of our democratic rights that's been given to us, not only to vote, but to, as the different laws are being put forward, to say these are the new laws that we want to bring in, whether it's the Bella Bill, whether it's hate speech, whether it's on, national health care or whatever, we can participate. This is what it means to be in a participative democratic democracy where we can take part in the decision-making processes. And that is our opportunity to have our say. And it's so important that we do. It's important what we say, and it's very important how we say it. And that's where our Christian witness comes in, because I've sometimes seen Christians just being terrible witnesses in how they speak about their leaders, the leaders of the country, how they speak to the leaders of the country, actually not being a Christian witness at all. And then thirdly, I want to say, and I think this is particularly important for tomorrow as well, where we say it. Nowadays with Facebook and social media, and, all of us everyone's an expert. Everyone's got an opinion. And sometimes we think that just because it's on Facebook and social media, we can be more brash and more, abrupt and frank or whatever, because no one's going to come back, and we engage in all these debates on Facebook, which really doesn't go anywhere. I mean, does it really ultimately, does that noise, dis net 'n groot geraas. That's what it is, but it doesn't make any difference. And so rather than voicing our opinion everywhere, it's not going to make a difference. Let's throw in our weight behind the process and the people who are in those places of power, like for SA, or like tomorrow, the political parties will be voting for, and who can actually make a difference, who have the experience, who have the competence, who have the know-how, who have been given that place of authority, that mandate, as Janet has said, to actually make a difference rather than just criticizing and washing out our mouths on social media. And then finally, I want to say, Sheldon, another one which we can make a noise and make a difference is to get involved on a local level. Not all of us may be called to the passages of power, but all of us, we have kids in school, we can get involved on the school governing body level, or there are many local bodies where we can get involved and where as ordinary people, we can actually make a difference and not just a groot geraas, not just the noise. So yeah, I think that, but then also, as I've said, ultimately for me, I keep coming back to keep the main thing the main thing. Yes, where we have the opportunity, try be salt and light, influence for good, but know that ultimately Jesus hasn't called us to primarily work for that, but to preach the gospel. And the kingdom comes not through outward laws, but through inward transformation of the heart, one person, one soul at a time. That's our mission. That's our focus. Let's keep the main thing.
Yeah, that's right. Well said. Because there are way too many opinions and or couch politicians, like couch commentators. They know the game better than anyone else.
Yeah.
But when you put them on the field, they are way behind the 8 ball or whatever that looks like and stuff. And I fully agree with that. And it comes down to local. That's why we have local church communities.
Absolutely.
Local expression is the essence of the microcosm of the gospel of the kingdom to go forth. So 100% agree. Make a noise in those areas. Yeah. Janet, I know we'll be wrapping up, so I'll put it back to you.
Yeah, and Nadine, the one thing, that I'm passionate about is that we don't have these voices that are released, but yet our lifestyles are so, counter, evidence of the gospel. And there's so many people, they're making their voice known, but in secret, their lifestyles are just,
Absolutely.
And the kingdom is within us. The kingdom must take effect in government, in business, in all sorts, medical doctors should have a vision to build a medical fraternity of this nation. What better opportunity now? Medical doctors could be healing people. There's so many ways that the church has to be involved, not should be, has to be involved for transformation and for reformation. So one last thing on local government elections. I think those are in 2 years' time, aren't they?
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
And that's when we vote for, just to give clarity, we vote for service delivery issues. We vote for
yes, the kind of bread and butter issues, if you can say, that affects us, almost on if the drains are blocked and the pipes are blocked, that there'll be somebody who I can contact and can come out and whatever. So no less important, but that's not what we're voting for tomorrow.
Yes.
So it may be, again, just going back to what I said in the beginning, it may be that my vote in the municipal elections may be a different vote to the values-driven vote that I'll be casting tomorrow.
Totally different. Absolutely. Values-driven vote. Well, this has been an amazing time. And Nadine, we know how busy you are. And we just want to really say thank you. And I pray that your voice would really, really resonate over this nation in a new way. Amen.
Thank you, Janet. And thank you for the amazing work that you and Sheldon both are doing in just bringing people back the whole time to what is the Lord saying. I often think about the sons of Issachar, who were able to read the signs of the times, know the signs, and not just that, but also know what to do about it. So thank you for being that prophetic voice in the nation, but not only hearing for yourselves, but encouraging others to. You have a relationship with Jesus, you go hear from him. He will direct you. So thank you so much for that.
One last word, Sheldon.
Yeah, also just to echo, thank you, Nadine, for your voice. May it continually grow with, Jesus grew in stature and favor with both God and men, that your voice would be shouted from the rooftops of what you're believing and fighting for. And, as we wrap up here, it's a time for God's people to take responsibility. Stop sitting back and letting everybody else do the work, and then we moan why it's not in position. Get involved with, like you was talking about the medical, if you're a doctor, what are you doing to improve the medical world? You have a voice, you have a say. If you're in education, you're in government, you're in, all the different kind of aspects of society. I'm doing my utmost in the life of the church lane to ensure that there's freedom and not control and hierarchy, so I'm doing the best. I'm taking responsibility, so thank you for taking responsibility for where you run and your voice kind of covers, and that's to the people of South Africa. Take responsibility and don't put an X on a ballot tomorrow as well. Why not? Amen.
Yes.
Thank you, Janet.
Your vote counts. Blessings to all, and yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we keep praying for our nation. Bless you, bless you, bless you.